Hello and welcome back to the Grandmaster division of the Intermezzo Championship. The final game of the season is ahead of us and it will be against Tamirys and Pajada. As you can see in the standings, this game will decide who will be able to win the league. If I should be able to finish this game before Tamirys, then I will be able to win the league. If Tamirys finishes before me, then he will be able to win the league. So a very exciting last game. For Payada, sadly, the outcome of the game will not change anything in his position. Even if he should win this game, he still will get relegated. But for the most part of the game, that he didn't have that knowledge, and yeah, it was for him that if he should be able to win this game, then he has good chances to stay in the league. But because DJ Farson won his last game, now even with the win, Payada won't stay in the league. But yeah, as I said, it wasn't clear for him for the most of the game, and so he was still very much motivated to play his best in this game. Yeah, and now without further ado, let's take a look at the final game of the season. In this game, I play in the third position, and as always, first of all, we're gonna take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that in H3 we have Sid Meier, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs as science leaders. There's no spaceflight but the Manhattan Project. There's Fleming and Marlene Dietrich together with the Hollywood. Pierre is there. Then there's also the Red Cross, which is interesting. Then in H2 we have the Suez Canal, but no James Cook. We have Maria Theresa and the Ocean Liner Service. We have the Harvard College and the Transcontinental Railroad. As culture leaders we have Bach, who maybe could work nicely with the transition into either Fleming or Marlene Dietrich with Hollywood. And there's also Antoni Gaudi as a culture leader. Newton and Nobel are there as economy leaders. And then we also have two military action leaders with Catherine and Napoleon. In H1 we also have two military action leaders, Jan Žižka and Joan of Arc are there. There's also Genghis Khan and Nostradamus to help with the strength. And then Leonardo and Gutenberg for some lab and printing press synergy, and Eleanor maybe potentially to go into a colonization game. As wonders we have St. Peter's Basilica and Forbidden City as happy face solutions, and Universitas is an economy wonder, the Great Wall is a military wonder, and then there's also the Taj Mahal. Tamirys is in the first position and he opens the game with taking Roman roads, which I think might be the best decision. Maybe he could think about taking Cleopatra, but then he probably would only get the Acropolis, and it could also be that the Acropolis stays on two civil actions, so that's probably something that he doesn't want. And with the Roman roads, maybe he does not get a very strong leader, but maybe Caesar in first position could work, and yeah, so that seems like the best pick here. Then Payada is a very strong first pick, goes for Cleopatra and a Stonehenge, so takes a leader and wonder in his first pick, and then thanks to Cleo's ability will be able to spend all of his 4 civil actions on improving his civilization, as we can see at the next turn. And then at my turn I have some options. I could just go for Alex, just for the yellow token. I know exactly what I can get. But I think there is some Sun Tzu synergy in this game here. There is first of all the Suez Canal if I want to go for a colonization game. There's also Jan Žižka and Genghis Khan who can work very nicely with the improved tactic. And so I thought that Sun Tzu together with the frugality should be better than Alex. I can also think about Caesar maybe, but I also would only get 1 yellow card together with him. And with being in last position, I think I like Sun Tzu more here. I just get more draws in, and I know a little bit more what I will get, and maybe with Jan Žižka and Genghis Khan I can improve on a tactic and maybe get ahead in strength. Then Tamirys has to make the decision, does he want to go for Alex for 2 civil actions or for Caesar for 1 civil action? He chooses to go for Alex for 2 civil actions, elects him and builds a mine. And that's definitely very costly. The Rome roads already cost 4 civil actions, and now with not being able to replace Alex, another civil action is lost. So I'm not sure if it is really worth it to go for Alex for 2 civil actions, but Tamirys is a very economy-oriented player, and doesn't really like to go for a lot of military early on, so Caesar doesn't really fit his playstyle. Maybe I would have gone for Caesar here, available for 1 civil action, but I definitely also can understand the decision to go for Alex. Then Pajada elects Cleopatra, builds a mine, increases population, and builds one stage of the Stonehenge. So even though he took a leader and a wonder, in which case he most of the times will be forced to take yellow card, he, thanks to the ability of Cleopatra, will be able now to spend all of his 4 civil actions on his civilization. This turn I can elect Sun Tzu, I want to build my mine, and of course I could go for one of those HA wonders, but I think there's a much better solution here. First of all, the Engineering Genius 1 is available for 2 civil actions, which is a very strong yellow card, and also the Forbidden City is coming down the row, so there's also an H1 wonder that I can spend this Engineering Genius 1 on, and the Forbidden City also might be quite nice for me. It might be a nice mix out of getting more economy and also improving my military situation. The civil action will improve my economy, and the 2 ignored unhappy workers will maybe allow me to put more workers into military with Sun Tzu if I want to go for a military play. So I was very happy here to take this Engineering Genius for 2 civil actions. I have now no free population, which might be a little bit awkward because I want to see it, but if I should miss out on the religion, it's also not too bad, especially if I should go for the Forbidden City, because then I, with the 2 ignored unhappy workers, missing out on the religion is maybe also not too bad. I draw 2 colonization cards, also the Pestilence in the strategic territory, and with already having drawn 2 colonization cards, the strategic territory seems like a very nice seat for me. Tamirys uses Alex immediately, builds a lab and increases population, and then also takes the cultural heritage. And the next turn, maybe he will be able to go for one of those leaders. Maybe if the right development is open, he can just finish the Rome roads, maybe go for alchemy, so there are some options for him at the next turn. Then Pajada builds 2 stages of the Stonehenge. He doesn't want to build his second lab yet. And then he takes the rich land and the breakthrough. So the breakthrough, of course, is quite a nice yellow card to get for 1 civil action. And at the next turn he will be able to finish the Stonehenge. Probably he already has the Universitas in mind. With that, now that he built more stages in the Stonehenge, he can finish the Stonehenge at the next turn and then take the Universitas, and then he has another project that he can work on with Cleopatra, so that wouldn't be possible if he builds the second lab, and that might be the reason why he wants to delay it even more. This turn I seed the strategic territory into the deck, and the development of settlement is open, giving me an additional population. And as I said in the last turn, originally I wanted to go for the Forbidden City, but here I choose to go for this Universitas. The Forbidden City, I think, would still be a very nice wonder for me, but yeah, I think the Universitas is also very strong for me, and while it doesn't help directly with my military, it might still be very nice, because I can finish this Universitas, I don't have to build my second lab yet, and then I maybe have more workers available that I can put into my military. And I thought about going for Forbidden City, maybe even together with Masonry, but I just thought I will be too low in science, and the additional science of the Universitas could also be very helpful. And also, as I said, Pajada might really be was maybe really looking into going for Universitas himself at his next turn, and now I also take this option away from him. Maybe it will now be harder for him to find projects for Clio, although he can still finish the Stonehenge, can still build a second lab, so that might not be the biggest problem for him. But I just thought it will be a very nice wonder for me. I can finish it immediately the next turn, and might be stronger than an early Forbidden City. And then to get out of corruption I can build 1 stage and then increase my population. I thought about going for the Masonry. I could save 1 step at my next turn and then have the Masonry available, but even though I get some additional science with the Universitas, I still thought that I maybe want to have my science available for something else. And also I didn't really want to take any of those cards, because the knights, it would be nice if those knights stay in 3 civil action. That maybe makes it more likely that I will be able to get them at my next turn. Though as far as I know Pajada, I kinda did expect that he will take those knights. Tamirys takes a bunch of cards, the Alchemy, the Swordsman, and Nostradamus. So he also has now replacement, or has now a new leader after using Alex. It isn't willing to pay 2 civil actions for Leonardo. Could work nicely together with the Alchemy, but Nostradamus is also a very nice solution. And with me having Sun Tzu, maybe with missing out on the first copy of Knights, he was a little bit afraid, and the additional strength of Nostradamus might definitely help him quite a bit to defend himself later on. And also he can elect Nostradamus immediately, maybe seeing what events are seeded into the deck, and maybe if he has some events to push for himself, he can also start scoring some culture for that. Pajada seeds, and the development of politics is open, so even more cards for me. I have now a lot of cards in hand, a lot of colonization cards, also my first tactic with the fighting band, some strength events with raiders and foray, and also some other events like cultural influence and the scientific breakthrough. Pajada can finish the Stonehenge at his turn, that still doesn't get him out of corruption. For that he builds one warrior, and then he takes the frugality and the knights, so he's really preparing himself to go for military. Pajada really likes to be prepared to go for a lot of military, and often goes for in the offensive for himself. And giving the knights for one civil action to Sun Tzu probably would be a mistake, and the frugality also helps him with his military, with giving him maybe more population that he can then put into the military. This turn I seeded a foray into the deck. I was very confident that I will be able to win this, especially because Tamirys has Nostradamus, and but Nostradamus doesn't help him for this event. Then the development of agriculture is open, and this turn I really wanted to finish the universitas. There is the second copy of knights though in the card tray. I don't have a tactic with knights yet, but I will draw some more cards with Sun Tzu, so I thought it should be quite likely that I will be able to get a tactic with knights, and I would prefer that over the fighting band, although the fighting band also could work very nicely if I maybe should get Jan Shishka, but I would really like to get this copy of knights. I can't really take it for 3, I think that would be too costly. I really want to finish the Universitas, if I don't do this I miss out on a lot of economical value, but I thought it might be important to let the knights stay on 3 civil actions for Tamirys here. Maybe even if the knights aren't 2, he won't take them, he already has the swordsman and he has a lot to do. He could finish the Roman roads, and he just doesn't get out of corruption that easily. And so maybe it's not that important, but I really wanted to make sure that I get those knights at the next turn, and then I can this turn finish the Universitas. Letting the knights stay on 3 means that I won't take the iron, but if this game should get military heavy, maybe I don't have time for that iron anyway, and so I was not too unhappy about skipping this. And then I can increase my population, and with my last civil action I took the Breton circuses. There's Pierre in the game later on, also Anthony Gaudi, and just it's a very nice happy face solution, especially if if the game should get very military heavy. Then I draw some more events. I actually choose to keep the 2 colonization cards, which was a little bit risky because I discarded a fighting band, and if if I have bad luck, then maybe I miss out on a tactic. But with Sun Tzu I just draw a lot of cards, and now I have some tactics available that I can use with the knights. The medieval army could be very nice, especially if I should get Jan Shishka, but also Genghis Khan is available in the card draw, and the heavy cavalry definitely could also be a strong card for me. Then Tamirys seeds, and the development of markets is open, so even more blue cubes are available. Or resources, and Tamirys used those resources to finish the Rome roads. He would have been able to finish the Rome roads also without getting those additional resources, and now he actually has to get out of corruption after this, and builds a warrior for that. He isn't willing to pay 3 civil actions for the knights. I think that would just be way too costly for him. He also skips the iron, so the first copy of iron is discarded, and it also means that I will be able to get the knights, and maybe if Pajada takes one of those cards, I might even be able to get the knights for 1 civil action, which would be very nice. The development of trade routes are open by Pajada, so the last HA event is now out of the deck, and the deck is flipped now. Pajada goes for the knights, increases his population, goes for Joan of Arc, and doesn't really has a project for Cleo anymore, and Joan of Arc also might help him quite a lot in a military game. And then he just builds 2 knights, goes up to 6 strength, and doesn't reveal a tactic yet. I have drawn one of the copies of medieval army. Maybe he has the second one, maybe he has the phalanx tactic, or maybe he has no tactic yet. And but he puts a lot of resource into military and wants to be prepared if I maybe should go for a big strength push. This turn I actually didn't see it. I could see the wealthy territory, maybe putting another territory into the deck, but I'm actually the weakest at the moment. I would win the foray, and I didn't play any other strength event in the deck, but still, there could be another strength event. Pajada did now pay a lot of resources to get a lot of strength, and so I was not willing to risk it to be the weakest for a strength event. No, and of course, now with having the medieval army, I wanted to go for the knights. Of course, it could be an option to go for Genghis Khan, but as you can see in the card row, Jan Shishka will be coming down the row. Both of my opponents already have their H1 leader, and yeah, going for the knights in the upgraded medieval army tactic with Jan Shishka just will be very strong, and I was definitely happy that this option is now available for me. This turn I can build one knight, increase my population, reveal the medieval army tactic. I could also build a second knight now and don't reveal the tactic yet. It could be an idea so that my opponents don't know what is awaiting them, but even if I don't reveal it, I think they may probably expect that I have this medieval army tactic with Jan Shishka coming down the row. And then I definitely want to go up in strength so that I'm not the weakest after my turn. And then with my last civil action, I take the urban growth. That will save me some resources if I build this bread and circuses at some point. No, and then at the next turn I can go for Jan Shishka and I have just enough resources to build 2 more knights, and then I really could have a lot of strength. And I think I make a mistake here. Maybe it's not a mistake, but it definitely could be, because of the strategic territory I keep now both colonization cards, which definitely makes sense. But with having this potential to go for a lot of strength, maybe I should keep this aggression in hand here. Because if I want to go for Jan Shishka at the next turn and increase my strength, I will spend some more military actions, and then it could be that I have a lot of strength, but not the necessary military cards to take advantage of that. Of course, when I discard a colonization card, it definitely gets more unlikely that I will win the strategic territory, which also could give me some additional cards. So I don't think it's a clear mistake, but maybe it would be better to keep this aggression in hand here. But I also draw 2 more cards with Sun Tzu, so it definitely could be that I draw a new aggression, but I draw 2 events, so I can maybe push at my next turn, and no. Tamirys goes for the Code of Laws, spends his science into that, has now his 5th civil action, then he increases his population a bunch of times to get out of corruption, and he has now quite a bunch of free population, and then builds even 2 warriors, so probably to not be the weakest after his turn. But he invested now heavily into the warriors, missed out on knights, so it might not be that easy to get enough strength to defend himself. But there is still the Great Wall, so that might be a very strong wonder that he's looking for at the moment. Pajada increases population, goes for 1 more knight, grabs the St. Peter's Basilica and a breakthrough. The knight probably was to get out of corruption. Of course, he could build a lab, but then he has not enough civil actions to grab the breakthrough and the St. Peter's Basilica. And of course, he also sees what strength potential I have at my next turn. And with that, he probably did not really think that it is the right choice to go for the second lab now, and rather wanted to have this in the military to be safe. And also he remains the strongest like that, and if there's a strength event then he also could win that. And his big efforts to get stronger also kinda makes it look like there could be some strength events coming. Again, this turn I didn't see it. I am still the weakest. I still didn't want to risk it. I could maybe push the historic territory, but no, I just didn't want to risk getting hit by a strength event here, especially after Pajada made such big efforts to get stronger every turn. Maybe there's something bad in there. And in this turn I can build 2 knights, I just have enough resources for that, and then I can go for Jan Shishka, and out of the sudden I will be at 16 strength, and that's definitely quite a lot. And especially Tamirys, who is sitting at 2 military actions, should have no way to really get enough strength to defend himself against that. But as I said, now that I discarded this aggression, I actually don't have anything in hand yet to punish him, and I had to think about what I want to do with my last 3 civil actions. I thought about either going for irrigation or for iron, or maybe even both. Then I would be the only player with iron. I would have a lot of strength and maybe could now focus myself on building more economy. Maybe I will draw some aggressions in time to hit Tamirys before he can stabilize himself, and that definitely could be a way how I want to play this game. I also thought about going for the cartography. One territory is already in there. I have the historic territory in hand. The Suez Canal is in the game, and that definitely also could be an option to how I want to approach this game. But at the end, I made the interesting choice to make this game really military heavy, and I choose to go for the warfare for 2 civil actions and develop it immediately, even going up to 17 strength in round 6, which I think is quite a lot. And we are still in H1, and no. I just thought that Tamirys, with being relatively low in science, with having 2 military actions, with having missed out on the knights, with having no military, um, with having no tactic yet, it just requires infantry units, though I thought it should be quite likely he has a tactic, otherwise it would be quite dangerous to invest that heavily into the warriors. I just thought that for the next few turns, Tamirys might not be able to defend himself, and with the warfare, I can maybe make more use out of, or I am now nicely prepared to maybe go for some aggressions. First of all, I will draw one more card immediately, which makes it quite a lot more likely that I will be able to draw an aggression. And in general, if Tamirys should stay weak for some more turns, especially in H2, then the military action might be very valuable, maybe enabling me to go for an aggression, still draw some cards so that I maybe can draw new aggressions, and then I'm really nicely prepared to maybe make some use out of my strength. It's definitely a little bit risky, maybe going for the iron is the safer play, but I really thought I'm now in a very strong position to just make this a very messy game with a lot of military and maybe punish Tamirys for. Yeah, I mean, he is relatively nicely prepared for strength, having Nostradamus and this much strength and being able to go for swordsman normally would be enough, but in this game it isn't, and so I thought this could maybe lead to a very strong position for me. And also, when we can do this at the next turn. And at the next turn I have just 3 signs available, which is just enough to go for the bread and circuses. Sadly, I didn't draw an aggression, so I won't be able to punish Tamirys immediately. At least I can push an event into the deck, but of course I was hoping that I maybe will draw an aggression. Tamirys goes for the iron, which is an interesting choice, and I'm not sure if it is the correct choice. He will now be the only player who has iron, and it's definitely not bad, of course, to get his economy up. But I just think he has to find a way at some point to fix his strength. It definitely makes sense, I think, that he doesn't go for swordsman or something like this, because it doesn't really help him to defend himself against me anyway. So I think it's the correct decision by him to, now that he can't really defend himself, at least get up his economy, get something else going, and then maybe find a way to defend himself later. But maybe it would be the better choice to go for the alchemy first, because I think the thing that he maybe needs most to fix his military is science. He still needs a third military action. He needs to go some military technologies at some points. And now he goes really low in science, and that really could mean that he is very vulnerable for quite a few turns. But of course, it also depends on what events are coming. Maybe the new deposits are in there, and also we have to keep in mind that maybe the Great Wall is something that Tamirys has in mind, and then going for resource production first before investing a lot of resource into this wonder is definitely also not a bad idea. And then he also goes for the second upgrade, and with this last civil action, Tamirys plays the cultural heritage to get a little bit more of science, some culture, and Pajada seeds, and the foray is open, so we both are part of that. There was no very bad strength event that punishes the weakest player on top, so I maybe could have seeded, but I think it still probably was the right decision. And then Pajada and me will both get quite a lot of resource out of that. Pajada goes for one more warrior, increases population, goes for the Code of Laws, the Patriotism, and the Swordsman, and he has the second copy of the Medieval Army, which isn't upgraded yet, but it allows him to go up to 15 strength. And at some point he will be able to copy this tactic, or at his next turn already, then he would already be at 18 strength, so he also is able to go for quite a lot of strength, and definitely is able to defend himself. But there's one big difference between my civilization and Pajada, and now we really see the strength of the Universitas, also as a military wonder. We both have only one lab, but thanks to the Universitas, I'm now producing 3 science a turn, and Pajada only 1 science a turn, which I think is a big advantage for me. Of course, Pajada had the Stonehenge, so he did get some additional science, and at the moment it might be even, maybe on how much science we got, but the next few turns the Universitas will prove itself very valuable, and it might be a big advantage that I have over him, although I can't really punish him with any aggressions or I also don't have any strength events seated in there that I maybe can win at the next turns. Then it's my turn. I see that the historic territory I'm the strongest now, so now I definitely can put something into the deck, and with having 4 military actions, with hopefully drawing some cards, and with the Suez Canal being in there, I thought that historic territory might be a nice card for me. The new deposits is open, so now it definitely makes more sense that Tamirys went for the iron first. He has now a lot of resources and definitely enough to finish the Great Wall relatively soon. Then this turn I go for the bread and circuses. I have a lot of resource. I have to invest the resource somehow, and there could be a rebellion. I don't have knowledge about this, and it also allows me to go for even more strength. I can build 1 arena with using the urban growth, and then I can increase my population 2 times, even building 1 more knight and going up to 20 strength. As I said, if Pajada copies the upgraded medieval army tactic at the next turn, he will go up to 18 strength, so now hopefully I will be able to remain the strongest, if there should be some more strength events in the deck. And also, first of all, I need this knight to get out of corruption, but it could also prove itself very valuable, because there is still the strategic territory in the deck. And now I have the option, maybe if Tamirys or Pajada opens the strategic territory at their turn, to send 1 knight away and still have the tactic 3 times. So if I would send a knight away, I would still be at 20 strength, and the 3 cards that I draw from the strategic territory could be very, very valuable, especially because those are H2 cards, and if everything goes well, it might even mean that I can go for very early H2 aggression, maybe even for a very early H2 war, and so I think having this additional knight here is very important. Yeah, and then this turn I draw 3 cards, and of course I was hoping that I maybe will be able to draw 1 aggression. But sadly I don't draw an aggression yet, at least a strength event, so maybe I can get some more value out of my strength push, but no aggression available for me yet. Then Tamirys goes for the Great Wall. I made sure that this Great Wall stays on 2 civil action, as well, on 3 with the additional civil action that he needs to pay, because he already has 1 wonder. So he can take the Great Wall for 3 civil actions, upgrades 1 of his mines, and then builds a religion to get out of corruption. At the next turn he can finish the Great Wall, which will not be enough to really defend himself, with still being 2 military action, but the Great Wall will definitely help him quite a lot in the long run to stabilize the military at some point. Pajada seeds, and it is indeed a strategic territory, and I am able to win it for 1 knight and 2 colonization cards. And of course now I was really hoping that I maybe will be able to draw something very strong for me, like an H2 aggression on H2 war. But sadly not. I do draw some tactics though, and especially the hussars could be quite interesting for me. Maybe with having all of those knights, it could be a very strong tactic. Of course, the upgraded medieval army tactic is also quite strong, but definitely a nice option that I have in hand. But sadly, no aggression or war yet. So I feared that maybe Tamirys will now find the time to stabilize himself before I can take advantage of that. But of course, I had no aggressions in hand when I choose to go for that much strength. So there is, of course, there was this risk with going for this play, but still, I have a lot of strength. Tamirys is still not ready to stabilize himself in strength, so I was still hoping that I will get some value out of it. And and still I'm producing quite a lot of culture. I have some decent science production with the Universitas, and so I still was not unhappy about my position, even though I didn't draw the necessary cards yet to get some value out of my strength push. Pajada finishes the St. Peter's Basilica, has now 3 happy faces just from his wonders, which is very strong, which also helps him quite a lot for his military. And now he can play the patriotism, even build an additional swordsman, upgrade one warrior to swordsman, and is now the strongest. And again, it really looks like there is another strength event in the deck. And yeah, Pajada managed to go for 21 strength, so already at the beginning of H2 or even at still in H1 at my turn, we both go to 20 strength, so really a crazy game with a lot of strength, and kind of crazy that even though I have Jan Žižka with this upgraded medieval army tactic, which is like an ideal solution or an ideal situation, go for a lot of strength. Pajada just with putting 7 units into military, with having those happy faces from Stonehenge and St. Peter's Basilica, is now even able to overtake me in strength. But yeah, he also didn't play an aggression against Tamirys, which definitely could be an idea for him. I think he had enough strength so that this aggression should work for sure. Maybe not, because Tamirys has drawn some H2 cards now, but it should be very valuable, and he also doesn't draw any cards now. So yeah, we will see if maybe Pajada goes for an aggression against Tamirys at the next turns. This turn I see that I thought about maybe putting this worker into knights, getting stronger, and so that then I don't see it, but I just wanted to push the deck. I see the Crusades in, with the knowledge that I maybe will not be able to win it, because Pajada can just upgrade 2 more warriors to swordsman and might stay the strongest, so maybe I should play something else. The reds could be an idea. I don't go for irrigation this turn, but I take it in hand, and the other players also have very low food and no food production. So I thought that maybe the reds isn't the right card, but it could maybe be the better seed, because it probably will turn out that I won't be able to win the Crusades. I just can't increase my strength by that much more now at this point. Yeah, but the knowledge of the ancients wasn't really an option with just having the Universitas. I also thought about iconoclasm. At least I would know very exactly when this card will be available, but the same would be true for Tamirys, who would see with Nostradamus that I see the iconoclasm into the deck. And so at the end I just choose to seed the Crusades, and hopefully I at least will not be able, or I should at least not lose this Crusades. And there is indeed a strength event, the uncertain borders are revealed, and Pajada is not able to win that. Tamirys will lose 1 yellow token. So this turn, it was not that easy for me to make the decision what I should do. I could go for the knights, maybe get stronger, but now that this bad strength event is out of the deck, I didn't really thought that this is the best way to go for. I could just go for irrigations this turn, start increasing my food production, but it will take quite some time until this pays off. The next population will be unhappy, so I also didn't feel too great about this option. And so I just built a second lab. I thought that the additional science could be very valuable. First of all, like this, I have 7 science available at my next turn, meaning that if a coal should be available, I would have just enough science and resource to go for that immediately. That is not that likely though, because I have only 4 civil actions, meaning that I want to go for the coal immediately. It has to be on 2 civil actions, on 1 civil action, so that is quite unlikely, but still, if the situation should arise, if the coal should be available, then it would definitely be very nice to be able to go for it immediately. And also now with 4 science production in 2 turns, I will have exactly 11 science available, which would be enough to go for the Republic. I have the warfare, and at the moment at least still another military action of Jan Žižka, so the Republic should be a very nice government for me. And so those are just 2 examples where you can see that this additional science might be very nice. I do put this 1 population there, of course, meaning I have no free population. I can't really increase my strength at the next turns, but I should, yeah, being at 20 strength should be fine for the next few turns. Pajada will also not be able to go for a lot more strength in the next turns, and it also hopefully will be enough to maybe still threaten an aggression at the next turn, maybe even at the turn after this against Tamirys. And then I have some civil actions left, and I choose to take the irrigation and the reserves. I take the reserves 1 over frugality 2. Of course, the frugality is more efficient, but it might take quite a lot of time until I will be able to use this frugality. And I also have a very limited hand space at the moment, so I thought it could be very dangerous to take the frugality, and then it might stuck in my hand, and I could get some problems because of it. And so I rather took the reserves here. I could also take the dramas, maybe prepare for Bach and maybe for Marlene, and used that could be a very easy way to get culture. It definitely could be an idea, but I also have bread and circuses, and it just didn't feel too great. But it definitely could be an idea, but then I have one civil action left that I can't spend it easily, and so at the end I choose to go for the reserves. Maybe I could even take the drama instead of the irrigation, but it could be nice to be able to get some more population out at some point. Maybe the next turn, if the coal is not available, I can go for the irrigation, upgrade 2 times, and then with the reserves I can get one more population out relatively soon. So yeah, at the end I choose to go for the irrigation instead of the drama. And sadly I still don't draw an aggression or a war, so that's definitely a little bit unlucky, but I still, maybe I can still hope to draw an aggression in time. I draw the International Trade Agreement though, so that could be a nice card to have, especially because it's quite early. Tamirys finishes the Great Wall this turn and then takes the Frugality, is now at 8 strength, 11 with Nostradamus, which is still not enough to defend himself, even if he has 2 aggressions, so he is now in danger of getting hit by maybe even 2 aggressions, but pajada didn't go in for an aggression at his last turn, and he also didn't draw any new cards, and yeah, so Tamirys at this point has to hope and has to prepare to hopefully stabilize as quickly as possible. To not be in danger of getting hit by an aggression. And pajada, as you can see, has no aggression, sees an event and the rebellion is opened. And then he takes 1 copy of Republic and also the breakthrough for 3 civil actions. He really needs some additional science. Maybe he wants to do a revolution at his next turn, for example. He could do a revolution and get out of corruption with upgrading both warriors to swordsmen, and with the breakthrough he has still enough science after that to maybe go for an improvement of his economy very shortly after this, so that could be an idea that he maybe has for his next turn. This turn I offer the International Trade Agreement to pajada, and I want to have the additional resource. I just thought it will pay off more quickly than the additional food, and yeah. I offered it to pajada because at this point it was not that clear already that I have to focus maybe a lot on Tamirys, so the standings didn't play a big part in this decision. And I just thought that pajada might have the better position in Tamirys. That depends on what aggressions and wars we might draw in the next turns and how quickly Tamirys will be able to finally be able to defend himself. But I just thought that both me and pajada have a relatively similar position. We have a similar amount of culture, resources, and food. We both now get a republic in hand, and we have a lot of similarities. But with having the universitas and with having 4/1 science production, I thought that I maybe have an advantage here, and so I offered this to pajada. Well, I think if for Tamirys, it depends a lot on if I will be able, and if pajada will be able to make use out of our strength. If not, then Tamirys might have the better position with just focusing on economy without getting punished for it. But if he should draw some cards, then he has a weak position. So it depends on how the game will evolve, and I don't want to help him if the situation will arise that he will get relatively unharmed out of in this situation, then I could regret having offered this pack to him, and I thought that I might have an advantage here over pajada, and so I offered this pack to him. This turn I also want to have the Republic. I can either go for it directly the next turn. I thought about if I maybe want to do this, but I really need some science for something else. Maybe I want to go for the coal, maybe some military technologies, so I thought that investing 11 science into the Republic would be too much, and I rather thought that maybe going for revolution is the better solution. I also thought about the selective breeding. The problem is if I want to take the Republic, I can't go for an upgrade of selective breeding immediately, and then I would have corruption. I don't have that many options to get out of corruption here, and if I want to have the Republic, and I thought that I really definitely want to have this Republic, then to get out of corruption I kinda have to go for irrigation this turn, and I can upgrade 2 times. I could also take one of those yellow cards, but I have still a limited hand space, and I rather wanted to get the second upgrade in immediately. At the next turn, then I maybe can do a revolution. It wouldn't be an ideal revolution, because I would have corruption, but it could still be a nice solution if there is, depending on what is available in the card draw, and then I have a lot of civil actions. And at a turn after, then I would then be able to increase my population. And yeah, so depending on what is in the card room, my plan was now to do a revolution at the next turn. If something important is available, then I maybe delay the revolution, but in general it was the plan to do a revolution at some point here. And this turn I finally draw a card, and with that I maybe can use my strength against Tamirys, and it is the war over technology. And for war, the additional strength of Nostradamus does not help Tamirys. Napoleon also is discarded now, that's also a solution that now is gone for Tamirys, and maybe I can now steal some science at the next turn from Tamirys. Tamirys cedes, and the Crusades open. Pajada gains the culture. Tamirys will lose 4 culture, and Tamirys just remains with his strategy of focusing on increasing his economy. The other rifleman, the other strategy, so some cards that he maybe should take, that maybe also would help him to even be able to defend himself. We could, for example, develop the strategy, but then he has not a lot of science left, and Tamirys, as I said, really likes to go for a big economy, even if it is take some risks to achieve that. And we can see this now. Instead of taking the strategy, it could be a very important card for him. He goes for the Harvard College. No, and depending on how badly the aggressions or wars are that might be played against him, it definitely could be the right solution to just increase his economy, and then maybe some things will be stolen from him, but he has then maybe the production to just compensate for that. Also, building one stage will help him to get out of corruption, so that might be another argument for the Harvard College. He also skips the selective breeding. Additional food is quite important when a lot of military is played, but the Harvard College also might help him with additional science. He still needs the government forms and some more technologies, and also the ability to take and play a yellow card directly might also help him with his military in the future. And then there's also the first aggression. Pajada has drawn the spy and is now able to steal 5 science from Tamirys. Pajada takes the strategy, has now the science to go for it immediately, develops it, upgrades 2 times, and now with having that much strength, with having some additional military actions, he really prepares himself to maybe go for another aggression or war, and is now at 26 strength. And then he also takes the urban growth and the selective breeding, and maybe at the next turn he will then do the revolution, but now the next turn he wouldn't be able to get out of corruption. I also have the war, and it should be very secure that I will be able to win this war, and so I went for it immediately. Can declare it. I also can increase my strength with going for the rifleman. I thought about if this maybe that isn't necessary, because I have the hussars, and maybe I don't really need a rifleman. But the upgraded medieval army tactic gives me the same strength as hussars as long as I still have knights. So I thought, and that also prepares me for some other tactics, and it just felt better, especially because I also invest now my science into it. It also gives me an easy way to get out of corruption. If not, then I probably would have to play the reserves to increase my population. So and I choose to go for those riflemen. And with my last 2 civil actions, I could take the reserves, maybe even journalism, or maybe even Bach, if I should get one of those copies of operas. But I wanted to take this cannon. Now I have all the military technologies away, so that I'm prepared for a lot of H2 tactics, and it also takes the first copy of cannon away from Tamirys, who has the Great Wall. Maybe the cannons could help him immediately if he goes for war. He could invest his science into that before he will lose the science. Of course, he can go for rifleman, but investing even more heavily into infantry units might be difficult for him on the long run, because then it really will be hard for him to make a transition into a good tactic. And then at the next turn I will hopefully steal some science. Maybe I can go for the Republic peacefully, then maybe I can go for the coal. Tamirys offers the promise of military protection to Pajada, so sadly Tamirys gets 4 additional strength, which is definitely not great for me. But there's still the hope that maybe Pajada just accepts it, because Tamirys will lose 1 culture, and then he might go for an aggression anyway, and the pact will get cancelled again. But of course Pajada might have an interest in Tamirys not losing too much against me in this war. Tamirys goes for the rifleman, invests the science into that, uses the patriotism, and then can go for some upgrades. Is now at 18 strength, So I will only steal the 4 signs, and I won't be able to steal the Code of Laws from him, and thus Pajada will cancel this pact at his turn. And then he also takes the reserves together with the frugality. Could now potentially get 2 more populations out of his yellow bank, or he maybe can just use the reserves for the resources. Pajada opens the historic territory, but because of the war that is ongoing, both me and Tamirys are not really willing to bid for this, and Pajada gets it for just 1 swordsman. But with having no additional food production yet, it is maybe a little bit costly for Pajada, losing the 2 strength, and yeah. But with the St. Peter's Basilica, it also basically gives him 2 happy faces, so his happy faces are now really covered without needing any population in any urban buildings, and that's also quite strong. Pajada then takes the scientific method, develops it, upgrades it, and then takes the breakthrough. He could have done a Republic Revolution, but he wants to get some more science production now, and now he also really prepares himself nicely to maybe increase his economy quite a lot at his next turns. Because at the next turn, now that he increased the science production, he can go for a revolution to Republic still, although he probably will have corruption. And then thanks to the breakthrough that he just took after the revolution at the next turn, he will have just 5 science available, meaning that he could, for example, go for revolution at the next turn, then go for selective breeding, and then that would be, then he would have prepared himself very nicely to get now some economy up as quickly as possible. Then this turn I steal the 4 signs from Tamirys, and as it could have been more maybe, I could have maybe stolen the Code of Laws, but it's definitely not bad. When I have the Republic, the Code of Laws is maybe not that important, and it's still Tamirys now after losing the Spy and the War technology is now really low in science, and now he definitely got punished for staying weak on military. But now, with having Nostradamus, he definitely is now able to defend against aggressions. Also don't have any aggressions, and so I choose to play the Iconoclasm in. I just thought that Pajada maybe will go for Newton at his turn, and then he has quite a strong leader, and I maybe can go for Catherine or Nobel, but both of those are leaders that would not be too bad if I should lose them, and I thought that the Iconoclasm might then be fine for me, and also with having the knowledge about it into the deck, depending on how fast the deck will evolve. I could maybe prepare for it, not elect a leader yet, and then maybe elect the H2 leader after the Iconoclasm is revealed. Of course, Tamirys also has this knowledge, so we will see how this plays out. Then the immigration is revealed, and Pajada will gain 1 additional population. It could be very nice for him, because now he can do a revolution and get out of corruption with building 1 more military unit. I could have done a revolution at this turn, but the coal is available for 1 civil action for me, and I rather wanted to delay the revolution by 1 more turn to get my resource production up, to have the coal going, and then I can go for the coal this turn. I can increase my population, and at the next turn maybe, hopefully, I can finally go for the revolution to Republic to then have a lot of civil actions available, and then I also will produce more resources during my revolution turn. There is 1 problem though, even though it might look like at the moment that I will even be able to do the revolution without having any corruption, the international trade agreement will actually be a problem here. Because of that, I sadly will have corruption, unless an event maybe will help me with that. This turn I have nice draw. I draw the classic army, also 2 aggressions, but now, as I said, Tamirys is now able to defend himself, and thus maybe Pajada goes for an aggression, and the pact, the promise of military protection is cancelled, but even then Tamirys could still have the chance to defend himself. Tamirys cedes, and the inhabited territory is opened. I definitely would have liked to win this one, because then I could do the revolution without having corruption, because I could rebuild some units, but I was not really willing to send too much. First of all, I have to be a little bit careful. Pajada has quite a bunch of strength. If I send too much, I might be the target of an aggression, and I was actually willing to risk a little bit with sending the knight and 2 cards, and then I would not be able to defend against a potential aggression. But I was willing to take this risk, because the colony would also be very nice for me. I was not willing to send a rifleman, because now with having the classic army, I probably want to make a transition into that, and then sending a rifleman back would not be that great. It would be a lot better to send a knight, and then rebuild a rifleman, reveal the classic army tactic, especially because I will transition out of Janshishka. I have to transition out of Janshishka very soon now. Pajada is able to win the colony for 1 swordsman and 2 colonization cards, and then Tamirys plays the resource for 3 resources, builds 1 more rifleman, takes Newton, and finishes the Harvard College, takes the scientific method. So yeah, interestingly, Tamirys will take Newton, but he gets him together with the scientific method, has just enough science to develop the scientific method at the next turn, and then he really could go for a lot of science production. With 1 scientific method on Newton, he will have 10 science production, and that's definitely quite a lot, especially because he can also now defend himself. But he has also some problems that he still needs to fix. For example, he skips the organized religion here. He definitely could get a 2nd copy at his next turn, but that's not for certain. And yeah, because he will lose 2 yellow tokens soon, then he will have some uprising problems. He also has no food production yet, has not really prepared himself to go for a tactic. So yeah, he still has some problems, but he could have a very big economy going soon. Pajada seeds, and a good harvest is revealed, so some additional food is gained, again even 4 additional food, but thanks to the inhabited territory and to the immigration, Pajada has now 2 free population after doing this revolution, and that allows him to rebuild 2 units and to get out of corruption. And now with having 8 civil actions and 5 military actions, although one of those military actions he will lose very in the near future, he has now quite a nice setup. But I thought when Pajada can do a revolution, I also can do this. Sadly, I can't get out of corruption, and so I will have 2 corruption, but it's not too bad, and I really have to do this revolution. Now I thought maybe I could go for Nobel instead, replace the Anshishka, and then maybe go for the Republic peacefully, but I just thought saving the science now is very important, and also there's the iconoclasm in the deck, so when I elect the Nobel now, maybe I will just lose him very soon, and if I don't elect the leader yet, maybe then the iconoclasm will be opened before I go for an H2 leader, and then that could be quite nice. I also draw the mobile artillery, so I have not even the option to choose whether I want to go for classic army or for mobile artillery, but with already having researched the rifleman, the classic army might be the better choice. Tamirys goes for Newton this turn. He has the knowledge about the iconoclasm, thanks to Nostradamus, but he doesn't know where this iconoclasm is in the deck. If it is the last card, I think it would be a waste to not elect Newton now, and because he can get quite a lot of value out of him. And goes up to 10 science production, takes the organized religion, the reserves, and then plays the reserves resource immediately to get 1 more upgrade in, so that he isn't the weakest, and now I'm the weakest. At least I have the knowledge about the refugees. Pajada offers the scientific cooperation to me here, and yeah, I definitely choose to accept this. Pajada has a lot of civil actions, Nobel is right in front of him, so I definitely have to be careful, but Pajada has less science than me, and he also has less production than me at the moment, and so I thought that hopefully that will be at least equal, and that I will be able to get some value out of it. But Pajada will be able to develop immediately 2 technologies. He's willing to pay 3 civil actions for the navigation. He has quite a lot of civil actions, so he has to spend them somehow. And then he still has enough science left to potentially develop the selective breeding, but he doesn't do that. So he only develops 1 technology now. Could have developed the selective breeding, but no, he also didn't have enough on upgrades, so it probably does not make that much sense. Then this turn I see the freedom of movement in, I think. And that is, of course, I'm the weakest. There could be some strength event, but 1 important thing happened, and it is that Pajada didn't elect Nobel. And he still had Joan of Arc at the beginning of his turn, and I really thought that it really looks like that he has seen Iconoclasm on top of the deck. Otherwise, I think he definitely would have elected Nobel. Why would he miss out on 2 science production just because there could be Iconoclasm in the deck? I don't think that would make any sense, and especially with having the scientific cooperation. So I really thought the Iconoclasm is on top. And yeah, so I wanted to open this now so that I can then go for Catherine, still go for an H2 leader. Sadly, Bill Gates is available, so Tamirys will lose Newton, but he has a nice replacement immediately, and I can't really deny Bill Gates, I think. He doesn't do anything at the moment for me. Maybe I will get computers, maybe not, but there are some very strong other leaders for me, or not that many, but for example, there is Pierre, and I would destroy my option to go for Pierre. I think it just would not be worth it for me, it would be too costly. And so, yeah, I rather wanted to go for Catherine. Then the Iconoclasm is indeed on top of the deck. Tamirys will lose Newton, and then I can go for Catherine. I can increase my population, build one Britain Circus, build one Rifleman, and then reveal the classic army tactic so that I'm not the weakest. Sadly, I didn't find the time to get the second upgrade in. I thought about doing this, but I have to fix my happy faces, and I wanted to get stronger. Maybe I will be able to steal one yellow token at my next turn and use Catherine. And yeah, so. And I'm also not the weakest. And then I have 3 civil actions left, and I choose to take the revolutionary idea and a cavalryman. I could also just take the reserves, that definitely could be an idea, but a cavalryman could be important. If the game should remain military heavy, then it could enable myself to potentially go for something like modern army. It could be very nice to have this option already in hand. Also thought about the opera for maybe Marlene or I am Fleming and Hollywood, but I really doubted that I will find the time to go for that. Of course, maybe the game will now be very peaceful because we all invested into military very early, meaning that we all have not a lot of economy, and I think for all of us 3 it isn't that easy to go for a lot more strength. Maybe Pajada, of course, can copy the classic army at some point, but it also isn't that much more than the upgraded medieval army, unless he gets Air Force at some point. And so it could maybe be an idea to have the opera in hand, but I in the end choose to go for the cavalryman, and with the scientific cooperation I also thought that the revolutionary idea might be a bit better than the reserves, especially because I can get a cavalryman in addition to that. Sadly, I didn't develop any technology this turn, so I didn't make any use out of the scientific cooperation pact yet, but with having the revolutionary idea, with maybe going for one of those technologies at some point, or maybe some other technologies, I was quite confident that I will still be able to make use out of that. And I was very happy that I've taken the cavalryman after I saw that I draw the modern army tactic. While Tamirys has a strong option with going for gates, and as I said, I thought about if I should maybe take him away, but it was very clear for me that it is not really worth it for me. And while it is a very strong option for Tamirys, and while I really expected that he will go for him, there are a lot of cards that he maybe wants to go for. The selective breeding is available, the cannons are available, and yeah, so a lot of great stuff, and he can't really take all of those cards, so at least he has to make maybe an awkward decision here and has to pass on one very strong card. Pajada opens the strategic territory, or no, Tamirys opens it, but Pajada is able to win it. He was not able to send too much away. I think even 2 knights, that probably would also already be too risky, but I also didn't want Pajada to win it too cheaply, so that he at least has to send maybe 1 card away, and he gets it for 1 swordsman and 1 colonization card. And then, no, he has now drawn quite a lot of cards, and it definitely might help him. Maybe his wars, maybe aggressions, maybe some nice impacts. Tamirys goes for the organized religion, has to fix his uprising problems, and then he takes Bill Gates and even just upgrades his second lab. Doesn't elect Bill Gates yet, but then he would have corruption and only 2 additional resources. Definitely makes sense to upgrade a second lab, but it's also risky. He misses out on the cannons, and that could be a very important technology for him. Also, he has only 1 card in hand at the moment, still on 2 military actions, so if Pajada has drawn a strong aggression now, he definitely could maybe try his luck against him, especially because then the promise of military protection would be cancelled, and he basically, this aggression almost works for sure, unless Tamirys will now draw 2 H3 defense cards. And Pajada indeed goes for aggression. It isn't an H3 one, though. It is the H2 blunder, but it also, of course, does quite some damage to Tamirys. You lose some resources and some food. Pajada now goes for Nabal, and after the iconoclasm was opened, then he increases his population, builds a second lab. He wants to have a lot of science, especially with potentially Nobel Prizes being available at some point with the scientific cooperation pact that he has. He also takes the engineering and then the revolutionary idea. This turn I could maybe push the deck, although I didn't really like to push the popularization of science in there with Tamirys potentially. Well, he already has quite a lot of science production by Yada as well, but the impact of competition could be something I want to play. Yeah, but I thought that I want to use Catherine instead. Losing one yellow token does hurt Tamirys quite a lot because he's now in the other part of his yellow bank, meaning he has no minus food production, which might cause some problems at some point. And for example, no, it just could cause some problems and will make a difference immediately. And also, there is a very strong leader for me at a card draw, and I choose to go for him immediately. And of course, I'm speaking of Pierre. I thought about if I really have to grab him for 3, of course he's really the leader of my choice, because all of the other leaders not really would be really hard for me to pull off. It would be very hard for me to go for computers, it would also be very hard for me to go for movies or multimedias with Flaming or Marlene Dietrich. Marie Curie could be fine with David Cole, maybe I can develop some technologies with Steve Jobs, but of all of those leaders, Pierre is by far the best for me. But Tamirys already has taken Bill Gates, and Payada doesn't have any arena, so maybe I could think about not taking him. The problem is one copy of Bro Sports is already in the card row, and I didn't really want to take this. I could definitely think about it, but there's also a second copy that might be available at some point, and with Payada knows, of course, that PR might be by far the best, or is by far the best leader for me. And so he might just take him away, maybe keep Nobel for some more turns, get professional sports at some points, and then also the Olympic Games. So it might also be a fine leader for Payada. And so I thought if I want to have Pierre for sure, then I kinda have to take him now. To get out of corruption, I finally upgraded my second mine to get up to 8 resource production. And then I take Pierre for 3 civil actions, elect him, and then I also choose to take the fast food chains. I could take some yellow cards, but I thought having the fast food chains available could be quite nice. Just having a wonder available to finish at the end, and all the wonders are quite difficult for me. I don't really have enough food for the Red Cross and the Manhattan Project and Empire State Building. Won't give me a lot of culture, and the Hollywood also might not really. It might not be possible for me to pull this off, so that is probably the best wonder. And that gives me culture. I mean, I could think about a Manhattan Project for some additional strength, but I don't have any drawn anywhere yet. It could be an idea though, but I rather wanted to have the fast food chains available. And now with having beyond the fast food chains, I was not unhappy about my position. And I just thought that maybe with Pierre I will now be able to close the gap, a culture gap to Payada, and then with the fast food chains on top, maybe I will be able to finish ahead of him at the end. And yeah, and when we take a look at the overview, or we can take a look at it after I had my production, so that we all had the same amount of turns. Also, I draw the impact of agriculture and impact of government, two impacts that I maybe can see it, but impact of government, for example, is a little bit better for Payada, so it will depend on how the game will evolve, if I want to play those impacts in or not. And if we take a look at the overview, we see that I'm 10 culture behind Payada, but alone with the Olympic Games, the gap is almost already closed. I have a lot better resource production in Payada, but Payada has the better science production, and sadly I wasn't really able yet to make use out of this scientific cooperation pact, which I definitely was not happy about. I also thought about if I should cancel it, but I really wanted to use Catherine instead. Then both me and Payada have a similar amount of food production, and yeah, so I think our position is relatively similar, and Payada has more strength, also can copy the classic army maybe at some point, but he also has not the most resources, so it might be hard for him to go for a lot of military, and I have the modern army tactic in hand, and hopefully that will make sure that I can defend myself, maybe even go in the offensive if I draw the right cards. No. And Tamirys is probably is behind in culture, still has the potential with Bill Gates to maybe build something great, big economy, maybe if he isn't punished, or if he finds a way to stabilize the military, and then goes for big economy, maybe with the Empire State Building at the end, he definitely could go for a lot of points. So He is behind, but definitely still has chances. But also has quite a lot of problems that he needs to fix, like his food, his military, and yeah. But Bill Gates might help him quite a lot with fixing all of those things. This turn, Tamirys can elect Bill Gates, and then he just grabs the mechanized agriculture and the democracy. Yeah, the mechanized agriculture is really needed for him to fix, not have a lot of famine at some point, to maybe get some population out. And he has just enough science to go for democracy and the mechanized agriculture this next turn. So then he might really improve his position quite a lot. With the democracy, he will have a lot of civil actions. Yeah, but it depends a little bit on how the military will evolve. If either me or pajada will go for war, will go for more strength. If the game remains peaceful, if he maybe doesn't get hit by bad aggressions, then yeah, he definitely could be back in the game if he goes for democracy and mechanized agriculture. But he's still in a dangerous situation, and he also passed over the first copy of Air Forces. The autonomous territory is revealed, and actually Tamirys is able to win it, which I was quite surprised about. And as you can see, he has only few cards in hand, but quite a lot of colonization cards, so he's able to win it now. He takes the food from this colony, wins it for one rifleman. But it also means that he has now spent all of his colonization cards, or maybe not all of them, but he has only one card in hand now. It's down to 16 strength, and I have one aggression in hand that I can go for, so I have a very strong option for my next turn. And it was quite risky for Tamirys to send all of those colonization cards away, even though he gets, of course, a strong colony for that. Pajada goes for selective breeding now, takes the reserves, the rough idea, the air forces, and the fission upgrade. Just takes a lot of cards. The fission upgrade might help him to upgrade his second farm, and yeah, having the air force in hand, of course, also is quite nice. Maybe he can still go for some military play. Has two revolutionary ideas. Will be able to go for a lot of technologies if he wants to, and yeah, and also goes for some food. Has some reserves in hand, so definitely has a strong position here. Then this turn I choose to go for the raid, and to this point of the game it was already clear that I really probably should focus myself on Tamirys, and that he will be the big contender for the first place. And of course, even without it in mind, it makes a lot of sense to go for this aggression. It also has definitely a big cost, because it will not draw any cards, but I have some impacts in hand already, I have a tactic in hand already, so it might not be that bad, although it probably means that I won't draw a war and that I can't really go for a war. So if Pajada will be able to go for a war, then maybe it will be hard to finish at a first place. But I will be able to destroy both of the labs of Tamirys. That of course is quite costly for him with having Bill Gates, and I gain 8 additional resources out of that. This turn I wanted to go for the professional sports. I have the impact of competition in hand. It also helps me with my strength, because I won't draw any cards, and I have to be careful with not drawing any cards. Maybe Pajada will try an aggression against me, although I thought that he probably will go against Tamirys instead, unless Tamirys will find a way to go for enough strength to defend himself. And then, after going for the bro spots, I can build one, increase my culture production, increase my strength, and then I take the reserves and upgrade another one, going up to 32 strength. And now, I actually choose to discard a colonization card, and if I want to do this, I kinda have to increase my strength if I don't want to play risky. I mean, as I said, I didn't really expect Pajada to go for an aggression against me if only one defense card would be enough, but I also maybe don't have to take any risk. I could, of course, take the fission upgrade or maybe the endowment instead of doing this upgrade, but yeah, I also have quite a lot of resources, so maybe the fission upgrade is not really needed, and no, so I just choose to go for the second upgrade now. Tamirys goes for the democracy this turn, grabs the computers, the fission upgrade, the air forces, and the rockets, rebuilds one lab, rebuilds one rifleman, and will draw 3 cards. So he actually doesn't go for more food production yet, rather wants to maybe go for even more science and resource production with the computers. Also has the air forces in hand now, so I will be the player without air forces, but I have this modern army tactic, and I have a lot of additional strength with the arena, so I was still confident that I hopefully will have enough strength available to defend myself. If Pajada should decide to maybe go for a war with copying the classic army and then maybe going for some air forces. And pajada goes for an aggression, and yeah, with me going for 32 strength, it definitely makes sense that he goes against Tamirys, and he also will be able to win this aggression and steals 7 culture from Tamirys, and now pajada can do a very strong turn, and he prepared nicely for that. He has the engineering in hand, he has 2 reserves in hand, is now at exactly 15 food, and then he can just take the red cross, finish it for a lot of points, and yeah, so a total of 35 culture, I think, yeah, with 5 colonies. So that's quite big, and I think the red cross was not in the card draw yet, but he knew it is in the game. He knew that with his low resource production, it might be the only wonder that he can really go for. And he had the engineering, he had the reserves, and how the red cross sadly was available in the 1 civil action area for him. And he gets a lot of culture out of it, and it might now be hard for me to catch up to his culture lead. This turn I see the impact of competition into the deck. With having those pro spots, that will be a very nice impact for me. The developed territory is open, but I was not really willing to bid for this. Pajada is, and he is wins it for 1 swordsman. This turn I can play the reserves to get 1 more population, and then I choose to go for the multimedia to increase my culture production. And while pajada has no big culture lead, I still had some hopes. I have the Olympic Games going now, I will be at 1774 culture after my turn, so I'm something like 32 culture behind. But with the fast food chains, the gap is not too big, and with having better culture production now, maybe I can overtake pajada just with my better culture production, maybe with having some nice impacts like the impact of competition. And yeah, so I still thought that I have quite a nice position here, but pajada has now the lead, has still quite a lot of things going for him, still a lot of cards in hand. Maybe he can still prepare to go for a war, although that might not be that easy, because he has not the most resources, but he has a lot of science, and there might be Nobel Prizes. There's also still Steve Jobs, also Meyer as leaders that could work nicely for him, and so he also might have ways to get quite a lot of culture at his last turns. Then I take the reserves. I could also just take the patriotism, but I took the satellites here. I mean, the patriotism could be quite nice, but I was quite sure that I should be able to defend myself. Maybe it's too risky though, because the one problem that I could have is that I only have 3 military actions, and going for this modern army might require quite a lot of military actions. So maybe taking the patriotism here should be safer, but the satellites also will give me some strength. It will be nice for some impacts like impact of variety or especially impact of progress, and pajada is very nicely prepared for this impact. Did draw some additional cards with the strategic territory, and so yeah, I thought that it might be quite nice being a little bit better in this impact. And I also thought that it is really not that easy for pajada to go for ways to copy the classic army tactic first, and then he needs some additional resources, and there are no reserves left, only 1 copy of patriotism, 1 copy of military buildup. But if he wants to go for war, then it's also probably not that easy for him to stay weaker so that he can use the military buildup. And yeah, still it might be a little bit safer to take the patriotism here. I do draw the impact of variety immediately, so for that of course the satellites are quite nice, and the impact of technology is also available. Tamirys goes for computers this turn, increases population, takes the urban growth, uses the urban growth to build 1 computer, and then upgrades to have another computer available, takes the patriotism, the engineering genius, and then ends his turn. There's now a lot of science and resource production. Maybe he's preparing for the Empire State building, and then takes the patriotism to maybe defend himself. If he has the positional army or something like that, then he has now the option to go for some strength and should be able to defend against the war, but with already some defense cards spent, he might not be able to defend himself if there should be an aggression blade. Pajada seats, and the civil unrest is open, but no one has any unhappy workers. And then pajada has the option to go for Steve Jobs, and I think Steve Jobs is very strong for him here. He has not a lot of resource production, that's something you normally need with Steve Jobs, but I think pajada at this point has not really afraid to get hit by any wars. And yeah, he also doesn't need a resource for anything. He doesn't have a wonder that he has to finish. Doesn't really have enough resources anyway to go for a lot of urban buildings. So he can just use the resource that he has for Steve Jobs, and he has a lot of science and can get a lot of value out of Steve Jobs. Sadly, also with the help of the Scientific Cooperation Pact that is still ongoing, that definitely did turn out quite a lot better for Pajada than for me. I still think I would may make the same decision again and accept it, because at the time when I accepted it, as it was looking that I hopefully will be able to get something out of it, but yeah, then the game continued and Payada did take Nobel, but without losing him, because he had knowledge about iconoclasm on top, and then went for a lot of science production and just found a lot more technologies that he uh, wanted to invest the science in. But I also developed the pro sports, the multimedia, so at least some technologies. But at the end, it probably gave Payada quite a lot more value than me. Payada develops the Air Force this turn, plays the wave, and builds one Air Force, goes up to 35 strength. Also copies the classic army tactic. That makes me think that he probably has already a nice card that he can spend for his next politics action, otherwise it might be too costly to copy it. And then he also develops the rockets, and gets the first Nobel Prize immediately, the first 8 culture with Steve Jobs, and he still has 2 revolutionary ideas in hand. No technology though, so it depends a little bit on what will be available for him, but there are some technologies in the card draw, and he probably also did take a look at the deck, and there's something like oils, like Mac Egg, another copy of movies, so there are still quite a lot of technologies left, and so it should be quite likely that he gets another Nobel Prize at the next turn. This turn I see that the impact of variety, and with the satellites that will be a fine impact for me. And then the politics of strength is open, so Payada will draw some additional cards, and Tamirys will lose some culture at the beginning of his turn, because I at this turn choose to anti-age. I thought about if I maybe should not anti-age, and yeah, the problem is Payada has some strength. He has only 3 resources, so it seems like he can't really go for war. The problem is the freedom of movement is in the deck. If Tamirys opens that, and Payada could put one worker with that into Swordsman, build one more Swordsman, declare war, so I have to prepare for that. And I could prepare for that, but when I prepare for that, I don't really score a lot of culture, and yeah. Also with, of course, we have to keep in mind that my main goal now was to finish the game before Tamirys. If I really would need a win in this game, maybe I would decide to make this game one more turn longer. I have the better culture reduction, although Payada also can score quite a lot of culture with Steve Jobs. But I have more culture reduction. Maybe I could invest into a little bit more culture reduction. Maybe if I would have to take some risks. But now, but even then, I think making the game one turn longer would not help me that much, and I just didn't want to take any risks. There maybe could something happen. Also, Tamirys has no strong production. If I give him one more turn of production, maybe he can do something with it. Maybe make the Empire State Building even bigger. And so I just choose the anti-age. And yeah, this turn I can develop the satellites. I can at this turn still make use out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact. So I wanted to use it to get a Nobel Prize, develop the satellites and the cavalryman. Then I can play the revolutionary idea so that I don't miss out on the science, and take the tanks, the revolutionary idea, and the computers. And at the next turn I can go for one more Nobel Prize. I also have the option to play the impact of technology in, because I will develop now some technologies, and I can finish the fast food chains. I thought about some other options. I thought about maybe going for the military theory, and that could be a nice card if there should be impact of progress. Also nice maybe to take it away from Tamirys. Yeah, and then maybe I could upgrade both of my cavalrymen to get out of corruption, still draw some cards, because now I will have corruption. I didn't really want to miss out on any draws, so I didn't use my resource to upgrade both of my cavalrymen. Could be an idea, because the impact of competition is in the deck, but I don't have the best impacts in hand, and maybe I will draw a nice impact, so I didn't want to miss out on those draws. That means that I will do one upgrade less. Depending on if I even want to do those upgrades, maybe I can find something else. Although when I want to go for the Nobel Prize at the next turn and finish my wonder, then I don't have any free civil action. But it will only make 1 point difference, and I could draw a nice impact. Yeah, and so like this stage will end, and We can also take a look at the culture again at the second last turn now. Sadly, I don't draw a nice impact. Impact of Wonders is bad for me with only having the Universitas, and I will have the fast food chains, of course, as well. So draw War, so I might have to play the Impact of Technology into the deck. And when we take a look at the culture, we can see that I'm still quite behind Pajada, but I will be able to finish the fast food chains. I have better production, although Pajada will get probably quite a lot of value out of Steve Jobs, and Tamirys is quite a lot behind, but he has just enough resource with the engineering genius to finish this Empire State Building, so that's something he can do at this turn. And that's exactly what he does. He finishes it for 16 culture, takes the military theory, develops it, that might be nice for some impacts, and then he also develops the mechanized agriculture for Nobel Prize and destroys his mine to not have an uprising. Pajada seeds an impact into the deck, and the international negotiations is opened. I'm not part of it, and Pajada can steal something from Tamirys. He chooses to steal 3 science, and then he takes the civil service, develops it with Steve Jobs, plays both revolutionary ideas, and takes the military theory, also develops it with Steve Jobs, scores the Nobel Prize, and it really looks like there could be impact of progress in the deck. The military theory is only a small upgrade from strategy to military theory, and he maybe, if he would not take both of those cards, he could do something else. So it really is looking like the impact of progress is in the deck. And then with his last civil action, Pajada upgrades his second farm. My last turn, I can see the impact of technology. It will be the same for me as for Pajada, but it will be a good impact against Tamirys. And I don't, if I want to go for the Nobel Prize and for the fast food chains, I can't increase my food production. That could maybe be an option then, but that would be better for Pajada probably. And so the impact of technology, I think, makes more sense. The freedom of movement is open, so that's nice for me. I'm the only one who can make use of that. Did not find the best use. I thought about maybe putting a coal into the multimedia, but actually it's not that great, because I will lose then 1 culture because of the fast food chains, because the milk would give me 1 more culture for that when it isn't a coal, so it's basically only +2. Of course there could be some impacts, like impact of architecture, maybe even impact of science, where that could matter. But I rather choose to put 1 lab into the religion. The religion gives me 1 additional culture reduction and also 2 additional culture for the impact of variety. And so I'd rather choose to do this. And then I also have enough resource left to do this 1 upgrade. I would also miss out on this if I put 1 worker from coal into multimedia. And then this turn I can go for the Nobel Prize with developing computers and the tanks. And then I can just finish the fast food chain to 21 points and upgrade 1 of my knights to cavalryman. No. And then we can take a look at the culture before the final impact evaluation. Or first of all, we have to see my production. And we can see that I'm behind Pajada, but not that much. I'm 12 culture behind, and I have some decent impacts in for me. The problem is, Pajada also could have some very strong ones, and as I said, it was looking like there could be impact of progress in there. If it is in there, it will be very hard. If not, maybe I have a chance to overtake him. And Tamirys is just too far behind now, even with the Bill Gates bonus. It is probably impossible for him to overtake me or Pajada. And then the first impact is the impact of competition, which is a nice impact for me. Now I'm only 6 culture behind Pajada. The next one is the impact of technology, which is the same for me as for Pajada. Then we have the impact of variety, which is also the same for me as for Pajada, and is less good for Tamirys. But then there is indeed the impact of progress, which is +26 for Pajada, only +12 for me, +14 for Tamirys, and also the last impact is a very strong one for Pajada. The impact of colonies with +12 for Pajada and only +3 for me and Tamirys. So 2 very strong impacts for Pajada, but he also did draw a lot of cards with the strategic territory and the politics of strength. And even if he only had some neutral impacts, he still would be able to win this game. Yeah, so at the end, Pajada is able to win this game. I'm at the 2nd place, and Tamirys ends up at the last place. I think that was quite an interesting game. Really crazy strength push in the beginning. I was going for Sun Tzu, then was able to get Jan Žižka, and I managed to go up to 20 strength in H1. But I discarded this aggression, which maybe was a mistake. I mean, there was the colony in there, so it would also be very bad to discard one colonization card. Probably still better to keep one aggression in hand if I know that I can go for that much strength. And then I sadly it took quite a lot of time until I drew some aggressions. Also, Pajada for quite some time was not able to use his big strength against Tamirys. I really was fearing then that maybe Tamirys has the time to recover and then we'll have the better economy. But then there was the spy, the war, the technology, and then on the further down the line, even some more aggressions. Tamirys was forced into heavy warriors and he didn't have a tactic till the end. He didn't have legions or fighting band available and didn't make a transition into another tactic, and so at the end aggressions were just too much, especially the raid probably hurting quite a lot, but also the armed intervention, a blunder that Pajada played, and that then led to Tamirys losing this game. But it also was very difficult. He missed out on the knights. Both of those knights stayed on 3 civil actions for him. It would have been very costly to take those knights, and then he took Nostradamus to be better at defending. But yeah, with this crazy strength push, he just couldn't keep up with that. And then, even though I didn't, or we both, me and Paya didn't really couldn't make use out of that immediately. I mean, there was some strength events. It was then still enough and caused enough problems for Tamirys. Then in H3, I definitely had hopes on winning this game. The Pierre was available early, which was quite strong. I got the fast food chains, but Pajada prepared himself very nicely, finished the Red Cross, and then at the end scored a lot of culture with Steve Jobs. Also had some nice impacts, was the strongest most of the times, and was able to draw a lot of cards. And then he had some strong impacts and was able to win this game even by quite the difference. Yeah. And now that the last game has finished, we can take a look at the final standings of the season. And as I said in the beginning, if I should be able to finish this game before Tamirys, I will be able to win the league, and so it is indeed. I finish at the first place with 18 points, at the second place is Tamirys with 17 points, DJ Parson at the third place with 16 points, and Pajada at the fourth place with 15 points, and PV4 at the last place with 4 points. And yeah, as you can see, it was very close at the end, only 3 points between the first place and the fourth place. A very close season, and yeah, I was able to win the season at the end. Tamirys had a very strong start, had already 17 points after just 4 games finished, but the last 2 games he lost, and then that yeah, made this comeback possible from me. But just to demonstrate how close the season was, we can look on 2 points. First of all, Pajada as the fourth place has more wins than me, which is kind of crazy. He gets relegated now, but has won more games than me. Of course, he has lost 3 games. I was able to didn't lose I didn't lose a single game, was managed to finish 4 times at the second place, so that of course then make the difference for me having more points, but it's still kind of crazy that Pajada has more wins than me. And also maybe you remember this one game where I played against PV4 and DJ Parson, and I finished 1 culture ahead of PV4. If I only have 2 culture less in this game, I would be at the second place. That would cost me 3 points. I would be at 15 points, and because Pajada was able to finish 2 times before me, I would lose the tiebreaker and actually get relegated. So you could say that only 2 culture here made the difference between winning the league and getting relegated. So a crazily close season, and I definitely got somewhat lucky that I then finished at the first place at the standings. As you saw, that could have also ended with me getting relegated. Of course, I'm still quite happy about this first place. Really tight season, and also happy that I managed to be at least first or at the second place in all of those games. And also with being the first place, it also means that I will be able to play in the Grandmaster division again the last season. That's also always a win for me, being able to stay on the top and play with the best players. Yeah, and for Pajada, it's of course quite unlucky getting relegated with 15 points. I think that is the new record for the Grandmaster division in the Intermezzo Championship. There was never a player who got relegated with the same amounts of points or more points. So quite unlucky. And DJ Parson and Tamirys will be able to stay in the league. And yeah, and then yeah, I can just and then maybe Pajada and PV4 will be able to make it back in the future seasons. Yeah, so I hope it was an interesting season for you. It was quite close in the standings until the last game. So even the last game was very deciding, and I then managed to finish this game before Tamirys, and I was able to win the league. Yeah, so a very interesting season, and could have turned out a lot of things could have turned out differently, and I'm very happy and definitely also was somewhat lucky to finish the season at the first place. Yeah, and then I hope it was an exciting season for you. And the next games might be the games of the International Championship. Maybe I will then do some other videos before that, but I will see if I maybe have some nice ideas for that. And yeah, have a nice time and see you at the next video.